It's 5:30. We'll call this meeting of the Charter Revision Commission to order, Wednesday, May 30th, 2018. First order of business is to welcome new members. We have 4 new members tonight. They are Bill Stitch, Mike LaValle, Nadine Hoyt. Sir, I forgot your name?
Yeah.
Paul Smith. So, Louisa, if you would please swear them in.
So I think I'll do it all as a group, if that's okay with you. So you, all new members, can raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that you will faithfully discharge according to law your duties as a member of the Charter Revision Commission to the best of your ability, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, so
Welcome to the commission. Okay, we'll start with the roll call on my left.
Mary Torres,
Mike Supernant. Bill Stitch. Mike LaValle.
Nadine Hoyt,
Kathy Rich.
Virginia Sampietro,
Tom Sinkowitz.
Louisa Davis.
Paul Smith.
Terry Sweeter.
Lou Sawyer. Okay, let's move on to the minutes of last meeting. Did everybody get a chance to review those?
I'll make a motion that we approve May 16th, 2018 minutes.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. We'll move on to public participation. Is there anybody in the audience who would like to say anything tonight?
No.
You sure?
No, I'm all set. If I can, I will.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, we'll move on to our draft report. We did have a couple of things prepared. Our attorney, John Casey, prepared this information here, which outlines the original text, the new text, the changes, and the ballot question. So you have that. And then we have a sample ballot. Now, Louisa, this is not, excuse me, what it's actually going to be. This is just a sample of what it
That's just an idea of what it might look like, to show you that they can fit these questions on.
Okay, so you've got them both there. Are they going to give us magnifying glasses too?
He did say that, there's a few issues with making a lot of questions on the ballot, and most of that is due to the fact that the circles that people have to, answer yes or no can't be aligned with the circles on the back of the page. So that's why he's tried to split them apart. Let's put one on the right side, one on the left side. I don't know how that's going to look. But he said no complaints about how the questions look. He will do his best, but he will fit them on. That was his words.
Okay, so to go through this, once again, section 2.2, this simply deals with the requirement to have 25 electors at a meeting in order to approve something. The red on there, we're crossing that part out, and the question on the ballot will be, shall the town eliminate the quorum requirements of 25 registered voters to hold a town meeting?
And that's what we're going forward with, good.
Yes, this is what we're going forward with. Moving on to the next page about the annual town meeting. We discussed changing it from the third Monday in November to the third Monday in December. And the reason for that is, I believe the new selectman takes over 2 weeks after the election and really doesn't give them time to prepare for a town meeting. They're coming into something new, not really aware of what's happening. So the question would be, shall the annual town meeting be moved to the third Monday in December, which gives them an extra month, for 5 weeks or so? The next question, 2.4, has to do with the operating budget, town operating budget, where they can get into parts for the government budget and the Board of Education. The intent here is to separate both budgets so that if one budget passes, that budget would be left alone, and the other budget that failed, if it did fail, that's the one that would be reworked. And so you can see the questions there, and basically that's what it says. There would be some other changes in blue to that, but going along with the same as the question. That's rather long. But there too. Okay. Moving on to section 2.7, petition for a referendum. This describes various things that you can have a referendum, but it does not apply to the budget. And that's something, Kathy, I believe that's something that we went forward over, and this is what the judge decided that the...
Yes.
Okay. So what it comes down to is simply changing that section, and adding section F at the end, saying that section 2.7 does not apply to the budget process in 2.4, and there's the question that goes along with that. The voting districts, the registrar brought up the idea of having one polling place rather than having four separate ones like we do now. And Louisa, maybe you can explain this a little better as far as what the statutes say about how you can...
Voting place
Yeah, you're
districts.
voting, yeah.
Places versus districts. Basically, if I understand it correctly, we can change polling places, but there's a statute that says you can't, for instance, ask the Warrigan voters to vote in the Plainfield district because we're not adjacent to Warrigan. They could vote in Central Village or Moosup, but they can't be asked to vote in Plainfield because if you're asking people to vote in a different place, it has to be a place that's adjacent to their district. So we have a couple options. If something changed, it would be, let's just put it this way, it would be much more difficult than just changing the charter. So what he's suggesting, John Casey, is that we put this wording in there to allow us to follow statute. And then when we do that, it will open the door for us to be able to change voting districts, and therefore we'd be able to change voting places, if that makes sense. I don't know if you have any questions, I could try to be more specific. But the only problem seems to be, and I don't want to say it like it's a problem, but according to Sonia and Irene, the only district that is not adjacent to Plainfield is Warrigan. So they can only be asked to vote in a place that's adjacent to their district, unless we change districts, or possibly instead of coming down to one polling place, we could do two polling places. And then we could combine Warrigan with Moosup and maybe combine Central with Plainfield and have two polling.
And that was an early discussion. That was.
Yeah, you did talk about that first.
But we can't do that even now, because
No.
they're not adjacent.
What we can do,
We could go to two, but we have to change the words in the charter anyway, so he thinks we should do that as step one. And then,
Oh, okay.
That would allow us-
More Regan or
We're adjacent.
yes,
We are, yes.
that's what Sonia and I told me.
I'm thinking of where the roads are.
But if we change the charter to the wording he put in there, then we could decide what we wanted to do next and maybe go to town meeting to make that decision.
right, it gives us a little more flexibility.
Yes.
Right.
So basically, the question is going to say, follow state statute.
By eliminating, well, I should say, like combining, making two polls, you don't think it'll cut down on participation?
The registrars didn't think so, and their idea was to cut down on cost.
I can see the cost,
Yeah.
yeah,
I
definitely.
forgot exactly what it costs to have a,
And to create, and to increase hours on some votes that are taken.
On the referendum.
Yeah.
Yes, because they're 12 to 8, they
Right.
open that from 6 in the morning to 8 at night to increase availability.
Participation isn't too great, so.
pardon me?
I say participation at times isn't too great,
Well,
so.
no, and for what they were saying, they get very few voters in Warrigan.
Yeah.
So if they combine that with, let's say, Moosup or Central Village, that would be a big help.
Hmm.
Save a lot of money too. So. Okay, moving on to section 4.3, terms in office. Apparently, the way that it's written now, it's a little confusing as to when you're elected or when you're not elected after voting, how long you hold your term. So the ballot question would be to clarify that. And there are, well, what he's done is just taken out some wording at the end of the sentence there, and that's it. So commission members would, their term would begin on the Tuesday following the election. So that way there's no void in anything.
Talking December then.
No, the following Tuesday, which would be 1 week after.
Okay, so I can explain that a little bit further for those of you who weren't in part of the beginning parts of the discussion. The way it works now is that an elected position becomes vacant, and the board of selectmen, if they appoint within 30 days, appoint till election day. It's actually till the end of the term or election day, whichever is first. And election day would always be first, but according to statute, some positions start 2 weeks after election day, and we have to follow that. So we have a 2-week gap sometimes. So we have an elected position, like I always use Virginia, if you don't mind, that when she took over for Burr, she took over and was appointed until election day 2017, and Burt's position actually didn't end until 2 weeks after, so there was a 2-week gap, and the Board of Selectmen needed her. And so in order to fix that, the Board of Selectmen appointed her for that 2-week period. But if we changed the language, we could just have everybody end 2 weeks after.
So this
And now-
2 weeks after election?
Yes.
So Lou, you were actually on section 4-3 though, correct?
Yes.
So Louisa, that's section 4-4, if you don't mind.
Oh, I'm sorry, sure.
This is the one that says, or a qualified person.
Okay, sorry, so I was just skipping ahead. So 4-3, terms in office, that little section at the end that says, and they shall hold office until their successors have been elected and qualified. What the attorney interprets that as is to say that if there's a position open on the ballot and nobody runs for it, so there's no minor or major candidate in that position on the ballot, on election day, we have always said that is now a new position that's a vacancy. But he says that little part that says until their successors have been elected and qualified means that if nobody runs, the person who was holding that position has to stay on, even though they might not think so. So if there's a 6-year term and they were appointed for 2 years and they think their position is ending on election day and nobody runs for the remaining 4 years, they get to stay, but they might not want to stay. Now, obviously, they could resign, but that would just clear that up and make it a little less confusing. We have never really followed this, to my knowledge, and he says if we're not following it, that's really how he interprets it, so we should just take that language out. You're welcome.
Okay, we already covered section 4.4 a minute ago, so unless there were any other questions on that. Moving on to 7.1, 7-1, simply the medical board of directors and the jury committee no longer exist, and so their name, I don't think they've existed for a while, so their names will be removed. Moving on to section 8-2, town council. This is just to give the newly appointed selectmen additional time to speak with existing council they may want to retain for the future. So rather than giving until January 15th, which is basically a month after or 2 months after the election, it gives them an extra month. And I think that's all we have right there.
All those questions fit in here, right?
Yeah, he said the whole section. He didn't have question 3 or 5, so we would have to Yeah, those were pending at the time, but I explained it wasn't, people
And before we send all of these, are we gonna get another sample ballot with all of our questions on it?
Well, we have to get the Secretary of State to, so the next step is going to another public hearing to see if there are suggestions by anybody that you might want to consider. Then you'll get me the final draft and I'll submit that to the Board of Selectmen, and then they have to have a public hearing, and then they have to decide if they're gonna accept it. That happens all before I send it to the Secretary of State to get approved, and then it goes to the printer. So that's kind of the last piece.
And what's our last date deadline?
September 6th is the last day I can get this to the Secretary of State. So we have to have this done really by the end of August.
So Louisa, can you explain if the Secretary of State refuses it?
I've never heard of that happening.
Okay.
I don't expect that to happen. So it won't happen, right?
No.
It shouldn't. So then moving on, we have to decide on a public hearing date for this. And Louisa, we talked about it, what did you say, June
We said
13th?
June 13th, because you need 10 days to
Right.
to notice that, so it has to be at least
So
10
we can,
days from tomorrow.
So we can get that noticed on Friday, but we can't get it in the paper tomorrow.
Right, we can send it to the paper tomorrow and get it in
Well, rather
Friday,
than Friday.
and that is June 1st, right? So June
We'll have 10
13th would
days.
work, if that works for everybody.
Will we do the 6:30, Lou, or?
Yes, I believe we did 6:30 last time for the public hearing. It gives people a little more time to
Yes.
get out of work and get there. So that's going to be on a Thursday night, I believe.
Or is that Wednesday?
It's a Wednesday.
Oh, it's a Wednesday? Does that work for everybody?
And then, Lou, just to remind you, I think your schedule of meetings has run out. No? Or did your schedule go further than now?
We had one more meeting and we're going to have to
June
have a
6th, I believe, is the last meeting.
well, we're not following that schedule because of the minor issues that we've had here. So this is a special meeting. We'll have the public hearing on the 13th. We'll have another special meeting a week after that.
So if you're going to schedule a few meetings, you would have to put in another schedule. But if you think you're only going to schedule one more after the
Well, I think
hearing?
initially, after the public hearing, we only had one meeting.
Right.
And then I went to the Board of
Right.
Selectmen.
The public meeting was scheduled for May 30th and then June 6th.
June 6th,
was the
yes.
regular meeting.
Right.
So you want that June 6th meeting to be canceled because you're going to not meet
Yes.
again?
There's no reason to meet again until after the public hearing.
Okay, so I'll put in a cancellation for June 6th and.
And a special meeting,
So then do you want to have a special meeting after June 13th?
yes, on what, June 20th? And that's also a Wednesday.
That's not graduation. What? The 20th?
What time is that one gonna be at?
The special meeting will be at 5:30, like all of them.
Yeah, June 20th.
The public one is going to be on Wednesday, not Thursday, right?
Correct, Wednesday, 13th at 6:30.
So 6:13 will be the next special meeting. Is that right?
Public. I believe 6:13 will be the public hearing, and then 6:20 will be a special meeting at
Correct.
5:30, right?
Correct.
Is 5:30 will work for you? Okay.
So we need somebody to make a motion to that effect?
I'll make a motion that June 13th at 6:30 PM, we will hold the public hearing for the charter revision.
How about the special meeting? You can combine
Oh,
that.
combined, okay. And I'll also make a motion that June 20th at 5:30, we will hold a charter revision meeting,
Special meeting.
special meeting.
Do we have a second? No. We have a motion, we have a second, is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries.
I have this for you, Jim. That's just to update everybody's emails, so we can send out letters and minutes and itineraries,
Okay.
agendas, I'm sorry.
Yeah, we'll just sign off on it, all this. Is there anything else that anybody has? And how about a motion to adjourn?
No vote.
Motion second? I don't think there's any discussion about that. All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you all.